Board Meeting with Nat, where new leadership meets the waves of change. Dive with me into discussions on personal development, on transformation, a salty format, captivating, motivating stories and interviews with industry leaders and inspiring personalities. Welcome to another episode of Board Meeting with Nat, surfing the waves of change. I'm your host, Natalie Kirkeroglu, and today we will talk about the psychological aspects of change. The famous psychologist Maslow once said, in any given moment, you have two options. Either you step forward into growth or you step back into safety. And today I have a very special guest. She is a clinical psychologist. She is an ex-professional dancer. And she is also a motivational speaker. She was on many big stages. She spoke for the United Nations. I'm super excited to have her here today. Welcome with me, Sherina. Hello. So good to have you here.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit who you are, what you do.
In paper, I think I have a lot of things. So like you mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist. I used to dance. And for the past 8 years or a little bit more, I'd say, I've been dedicating my journey, my life to do a lot of inner work, to continuously learn about myself and grow. And at the same time, focusing a lot on personal development and mental and emotional health and how I can promote well-being and really have a positive impact in people's lives. So I do that in all ways and forms that I can, either through therapy or one-on-one coaching or mentorship or workshops or retreats, and just talking, and also help people in their journeys. So that's a little bit who I am, what I do. I would also say that I'm just a very big, passionate student of life, just very curious and open.
You're also an ex-professional dancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can you give me a bit context how you end up with psychology?
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting. It's a big change as well. We're talking about change today. So I would love to hear your story.
Yeah. So actually the story starts a little bit earlier in my life. So I was born and raised in Barcelona, Spain, but I come from an Indian origin. So I was brought up with multicultural upbringing. I went also to an American school. So I grew up kind of with a big identity crisis. And I guess this whole dancer identity was the first thing I picked up to as well, after a few identities that I picked up for myself. But I remember at school, it was like, okay, well, I've been told I'm the Barbie one, but then I don't really know if I fit here. And I guess it was just trying to stick to some identity that I could nurture and give me some kind of, well, she's a dancer. And then everything became around me being a dancer. After school, I remember I told my mom, I want to dance. I want to go to dance school. And she said, well, you can dance if you go to university. And so I already picked psychology. I've always had an interest in human behavior, and just I was always very observant of human behavior and nature. So I went to university, and at the same time I went to the dance school. And when I finished my degree, I did my thesis, I specialized in clinical, and it was so much studying. And I was like, I'm done. All I want to do is dance and fulfill this persona that I thought I was and I really, really, really wanted. And the dance profession can be very tricky as well. There's a lot of competition and you really have to stand out. And anyways, I somehow managed to land into a company. I was living in Tenerife and like living the life that I thought I wanted. And it was all about dance. I finally achieved something that I really wanted. And I thought, oh, I made it. But then the reality was was quite different. Like, we were training every single day, rehearsing every single day, doing the same dance performance on different stages every single night.
What type of dance was that?
So I graduated from modern dance. So it was ballet every day, contemporary, funky, tap dance, jazz, lyrical. Like, it was a variation. So then I was at this company after a few other companies and jobs that I had. And they always say something, and in this artistic world, is like, when you go to stage and you lose that nervousness or this spark, then something's off. And that's kind of what happened to me. It was the perfect life. Like, I had a lot of free time. I was training. I was healthy. I was dancing. It was just perfect. The ballerina life. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but there was something in my gut which was like, this is not you. Like, this is not what you want to be doing as a profession. This is not the way you want to impact others. It's just an identity that I wanted to fulfill, and it just doesn't resonate. So I literally followed my intuition. I left everything. I just quit dancing and I went with no plan B. And then I somehow, and then I circled back and I got again into the well-being space. And then I was like, oh, wow. And that's when I did the master's of, I want to help athletes in their mental, emotional health. Everything that I went through, this anxiety, this identity thing, this pushing and comparison, and this whole, internal process that happens with it. And I'm like, this resonates much more with me. And then that's how the transition happened. And then some years later, I somehow circled back into the dancing because now part of my work is through movement and somatic work.
Okay.
I guess it had to be part of my journey. It's just that I was holding on to these things as this is who I have to be now. I guess this other big part of me with the intuition part was like, actually, no, this is not how you want to be doing it or how you want to use it. So that's pretty much the story of me dancing and then transitioning again into like the well-being space or like psychology coaching.
You're sitting here and telling the story and it's in a very short form, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I have so many questions. I'm very curious. You're telling the story now. It sounds so easy, that it was so smooth. Like, okay, you felt it in your gut, something is off. And then you just said, okay, I'm done with dancing. I don't know what will happen. I trust. And it sounds beautiful, but was it that easy? It's also a big, big step that costs a lot of energy and can be scary.
The moving part wasn't hard for me because my family has always been like traveling, or I also went to different places for university. So I've already like lived in different places. So it was easy for me to, I will go live here. I will do that. But what happened in that time in Tenerife, which is actually where also I had this inner awakening, I would say. And I guess this is the first part of change, which is self-awareness. I spent a lot of time on my own. It's the first time in all of my years. I was at school and university. I was always with people, always with my family, always depending on what my parents would expect from me and what my others would think. And this was the first period of my life that I was alone, that it was just me deciding for myself, me hanging out with myself. I didn't really know a lot of people yet. It was a new place that I was in. And slowly there started to be some more inner silence. And that's where I started questioning a lot of things. That's when I didn't know about journaling, but that's where I picked up a journal. I was like, whoa, there's too much information in my head. I need to organize this. And I just out of nowhere started asking myself really random questions like, why did I do this? Why do I think this? And why did my mom say this to me? Like, do I actually believe this? I just started like reflecting so much that I was like, whoa, I have no idea who I am. And so I think this journey happened parallel to this decision. And that's how I reached to like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. It's not the life that I actually think I want for myself. I don't feel this is something I really, really, really want. I don't align with this. And then I had no idea what I really thought about myself, my self-perception, my values. It's kind of like everything showed up here and I was like, wow, I'm so lost. And that's actually how like the transition happened. So it was difficult, of course, because I was going through all of this by myself. And I was realizing a lot of things about my behavior and like things about myself. And at the same time, this feeling of what am I doing here kind of thing. There was just something in me that was like, there's something else for you and this is not it. But of course, it didn't happen like, I'm not happy here, let's go. There was a process that was happening inside already.
Hear out two things, actually. You took time for yourself. I think that's very challenging for many people out there when they're in their routine and they rush through their day. I think that's already great that you had that and you were very much connected to yourself, that you listened to your body, to your feeling. I think that's also challenging for some people to have this connection, to hear this inner voice. You were successful in your career, right, in the dancing. And I feel when it comes to change, to let go of something you're actually really good at, to create something new can be scary as well, right? To just let go and go into this unknown space. What would you recommend people that are in this stage right now?
I mean, I have to say I wasn't the best dancer. And, in this world, it's like you either stand out. Like, I think I would have a lot to grow still and to do. And for me back then in this area, it was like I've spent so many years sacrificing and working so hard to get better. And it's a really long career, right? You're like, you have to consistently practice and dance and dance and dance and get better and better and better. So for me, it was like, so much effort. I pushed so hard to just drop it. What if I pushed a little bit harder and reached to the next level? But then it was like, well, it doesn't make me happy. Like it doesn't, there's a part of me that's not fulfilled here. So why am I pushing again, So I guess a big fear for change is like, what about all that I've already done to get to where I am now? What about all the studying? And what about all the process? And but for me, now it's like, oh, wow, all those years were worth it because now it's supporting the work that I'm doing. It's supporting me on a personal level. Like I'm always moving and dancing and like to release emotions, to understand myself. And now I even use it as part of my job. So it's like, what can I take from this process that can help me in this new change or phase that I'm going into? Like, I feel that there's always something we can take. And so I would say that eventually you don't just change, like I'm done with this, I go here. It's just also understanding that it's all decisions that we're making, and a decision is just a decision. And some people take 2 decisions and they already land where they want. And for some people, we just continuously have to test and try and explore until we find something that really resonates. I think everyone's journey is different. And I think with change is also that fear of letting go of what was. Like it's no longer that anymore. So it's like it leaves us in this limbo of empty space. Well, okay, if it's not this, then what? And this what, you don't know. So of course it's scary. Of course it's uncertain. Of course it's like, the feeling of you've lost it. But I like seeing change as a transition phase. It's not that you're lost. It's not like you don't know. You're just reorganizing or re-exploring or rediscovering something that feels aligned with yourself now. I really think that people who don't have change in their life, it's really weird. Like if you're exactly the same since you were 12, 15, 16, and now you're 35 and it's still the same, and you have the same behaviors, the same routine, the same everything,
you're not growing.
You're not growing,
say, right?
Of course. So change is the only constant thing. Evolution is a constant thing. Like everything is constantly shifting and growing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's awesome. Because in every moment in life, our values can change, our interests can change, our hobbies can change. So it's really kind of like keeping up with what's coming in from you. And there was a moment in life that for me was this, and then I didn't resonate with it anymore. And I'm making space for something else. When I talk about change, I always say, eventually we have to keep an open mind, an open heart, a different perspective of let's evolve, let's learn, let's see what life brings to me. And I will kind of build that resilience and adapt. But it's also allowing ourselves that space of play and explore. And I always mention this, like we don't give ourselves permission to lose ourselves and try new things and discover new adventures and people and connections and hobbies, because that's the only way you will actually learn. Well, is it this or is it not? So I feel we have to fit in a different structure, and we have to have everything sorted out, and my job and my career and my relationship. And no, like if we never have this playfulness, this exploration, we will not know.
It's true. I think kids are so good in that. Yeah. And I feel as adults, sometimes we lose that, unfortunately. But then life pushes us again back to that state. Because, I mean, you can drive change actively, right? You can say, I want to change. Or sooner or later, life will force you to change because things happen. Life happens. I always say life happens. I love that you mentioned the dancing. It came back to you. And I think that helps to not be afraid of changing something or ruining your career if you try out something new. Whatever you did in the past, it's not lost. Yeah. It's not for nothing. It's still a part of your past. And maybe sooner or later, you will use these things again.
Yeah, definitely. I think it just has to do a lot with identity as well. Like, I am a lawyer. So I cannot be a DJ or I cannot be a professional tennis player because I'm a lawyer. And so it's also that perception or identity we have of who we have to be in this life, right? And for me, it has been like, I can be this, but I can also be this. I can be a professional dancer and dance here and there, and I can also be a psychologist, and I can also be a world traveler, and I can also be a DJ if I would want to, right? And I had this mindset of like, oh, if I'm a clinical psychologist, I can only work in a clinic. Over these years of kind of allowing change. So it's really focusing on what are my values, what are my strengths, what am I good at, what are my talents or my natural gifts, and how can I use that or apply it in all the other things that I do. Even if you're in a job that you're like having a big career change, there are probably a lot of things and skills that you know that can be useful in the next thing that you do. You're literally expanding yourself and being all you can be in all ways and forms. And I think when we embrace change, we're also opening space for new opportunities, new connections. We learn so much about ourselves because I think we tend to just live in a little box. Like, I am this and I cannot move from here because this is what I chose. And so now I cannot undo this. Just get out of the box and try and explore. And it's, if it doesn't work out, it will take you somewhere else and then somewhere else until you land somewhere that feels, this is it. Change is movement, and we are constantly need to move to expand and grow.
I always learn from the ocean when I'm surfing, and I really like that picture, when you are on your surfboard and you're waiting for the wave. And if you're dreaming, if you're not aware, if you're not really connected, and then the current will just bring you somewhere else because the ocean is constantly changing and moving. And then at some point, you're no longer at the perfect spot to catch the best waves. So you drifted somewhere. Yeah. So it's so important to stay connected and to see where I am right now. Is it good to do the check-ins? And then to maybe move somewhere else where the perfect wave is, right? Yeah. Because at some point, maybe you're in the channel and there are no waves and you're not aware because you're just disconnected. Yeah. So that's for me such a strong picture of,
I love it.
To be just, aligned with yourself and to take this moment to check in. I mean, we all know it's the daily life.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're in this routine and we are just rushing through the day. One thing came to my mind. I did a coaching maybe 2 years ago with an amazing woman, and she gave me one advice, and I loved it so much. She said, see your life as a book in chapters. When you have to make decisions or you want to change something, just define what is the next chapter, the next 6 months. It doesn't have to be, what do I want to do the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Maybe you have an idea, you want to try out something new. I will dedicate my next 6 months
for this.
You write down in your journal, what is now my test project? And maybe you want to become a DJ, right? And then, you see, what can I do to learn this new skill? Give your inner voice a chance, and you don't have anything to lose. So it's just a test.
Yeah.
And she said, if you see it like this, it's great because it reduces the fear of change.
Yeah. There's something I also tell some people, which is like, I'm a strong believer that small changes make the biggest impacts. So sometimes people are scared because that change is so big or what they're thinking about is so big. So an exercise that I do or that I kind of share is, the wheel of life, right? Like the different areas. So I kind of make people like see like where you're at this moment and what needs to happen for you to be a little bit in a different number, right? At like a higher rate, like what's the one little thing that needs to happen that could make you feel a little bit better in this area? Or is there anything missing? Is there anything you would want to change or do in a different way? And sometimes it's a very small change going from just, instead of me sitting in the sofa, then that time I will use it to do some exercises. And then slowly you can start creating that habit and slowly there will be a shift. And then slowly you will end up with that goal that you want. Breaking it down into smaller pieces, something that's very small for you, digestible, and that you can actually do, helps us slowly make the shift. The same with the work I do. Like a lot of the work is like inner transformation or inner change, right? And it can be a really long process. It's like really breaking into pieces, things, a lot of self-awareness and just seeing what are things that are no longer working for you, what are the patterns that are not helpful, and slowly kind of shifting things. And then over time, the change has already happened because you've been cultivating this little change, this little habit or this little activity over and over and over again that, our system, our body doesn't process big demands or big shifts. Like we stress because it's not familiar. Suddenly you can do something that you thought was like so out of your reach. For a career change, for example, right? Maybe you're not going to just leave your job and just look for something else, immediately. Like maybe that feels too scary if you've been like 8 years in the same company and the same profession. Maybe you just want to say like, what is the first thing that I would have to do to maybe get closer to where I want to? What are the small things?
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. The small things that I can do, which will then lead me to that transition, to that change. And again, like what we're saying, like being very honest with yourself, like, do I need a break? Or, some people are like, I need a change. I want a promotion. It's like, are you in that space now to hold that responsibility? I think when we talk about change, again, it's coming back to yourself, like what kind of change am I looking for? And like what kind of space or energy do I have now? Sometimes when we think about growth and evolving, it's always bigger and more and bigger and more. But sometimes it's completely in the other direction. So I think we should all do this exercise of really tuning in with ourselves and really trying to find that stillness to kind of intuitively, like, just connect with yourself and like ask yourself these questions, like, where am I at now? Like, what would make me feel happier or in peace, or that this is what I really need? And how can you start giving this to yourself a little bit every day with small stuff? And the more you give yourself this space, the more clarity you will get. And you'll be more comfortable in this, I'm just playing and exploring now. Like giving yourself the permission of, I don't have to know exactly what's next. I know there's something missing. I know there's something else for me. I'm just not sure 100% what that is. But I know that these little things make me feel a little bit better. So connect with that. Baby steps, a little bit of this. And the more you do this, the more, I think, the more clarity you find. Like, oh, okay, this feels good. This doesn't. Here, go to the other direction.
I think a big role plays expectations from society. I mean, if you think about career, right, as you said, bigger and better and more money, more success. If you just look at LinkedIn, social media, there's so much pressure, right? You have to become head of and next role, bigger, better position, and so on. What would you say what helps people to somehow disconnect a little bit from all these voices out there? Because I feel it is a pressure, right? It is like somehow it's not only like maybe friends and family, but also the pressure that in general comes from all the noise out there.
I think we all have it. I've had it myself often. And I don't want to like eliminate the fact that, of course, we all want to grow and become successful and make more money and own a house. Like, I think we all want and we need this sense of achievement and progress. But I think it's also fair to say, like, we need to find a balance with how much am I willing to sacrifice, or how, like, is it healthy for me or not? Like, is it sustainable? Like, some people know that, okay, I will be 1 year and I will sacrifice because it's something I really, really want. And that works for them. But over time, it's what's happening to you internally. Like, am I facing then a burnout or a massive depression because I'm pushing so hard and forgetting about other aspects of myself that also make me live happy and healthy? I guess it's this really thin line of, okay, yes, of course, I want to set goals and I want to succeed. But then have this mental check of how am I physically, how am I mentally, how am I emotionally, how am I spiritually? Like, am I keeping these things on check? And try to balance it out, right? It's kind of going back to that masculine, feminine energy. Like, we're all taught to be in this masculine energy. Like, we rise with the sun and we put our clothes on and we're ready to thrive and go and hustle and out there in connection, go, 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 go. But then we all have this feminine side as well, which is relax and rest and recharge and be vulnerable and connect with your emotions and like very soft, gentle. So if we're able to find this balance, I think it's a sweeter way to live life and to perform in life. Like, if we're just pushing so hard, we will just pop. So it's just being very mindful of, yes, I want this, but I also don't want to put myself in a position that's way too out of my comfort zone and way too out of my flow state. I want to kind of be very honest with myself, see where I am, and what's the next little challenge that I can, it's a bit challenging, but where I'm at now, I think I'm ready for this. Where am I? What do I need? What's the next step for me? How can I do this? Does this feel right? Is this enough of a challenge that, okay, I can commit to this and, organize myself? And then it's also, again, I repeat this often, but going back to your values and what you really want, because we all have this inner chatter, and often that voice is not even yours. Sometimes it's your parents or something that you've heard from a tutor, and you just heard it so much that it becomes your voice, but it's actually not your voice. It's not something that you really want. You've just been kind of programmed this way by society or by other people's expectations. So it's, for me, a lot of the work, of the inner work, is coming back to your body. Like, when you think about this, how does it feel? Like, if we really try to find that silence, we can really listen to our intuition, and it's telling us like, this is not right for me, or this is not what I actually want. And so this eventually takes time, but I think we can all do this. Does it feel right for you in this moment? And if it doesn't, it's fine. It's drop it and find that balance, find what would suit you. Going deeper with these reflections and these questions until you reach to an answer for yourself that resonates. Like, actually, I don't want to go through all of this to be successful. I already feel successful if I do this and this.
I feel it gets easier. So this is what I experienced when you're more and more connected and you somehow have a routine to listen to yourself and you connect more. But of course, until you come to that point, let's say if there's a person who never did that before or never took the time, to connect, it takes a bit.
I feel that a lot of us just want someone else to resolve our issues, or to tell us what to do next. And I mean, it can be challenging to face yourself and to just sit with yourself and find the silence, because a lot of things can show up. But again, if we're trying to look for a change, then you need to know. You need to know what that is for you.
And I think nobody can really give you an answer, right? People can coach you, guide you a bit. But I once asked people for an opinion when I had to make a decision. And I felt like there were so many opinions, right? And I mean, these were my friends. And I just asked and I got so many different answers. And everybody, of course, talked from his or her own perspective and experience. And I felt so unsatisfied. And I was like, my head is so full. And I did actually the same as you did with journaling. And I think that's such a good tool to get everything out.
Yeah.
What do I feel? I really wrote down, what do I feel right now? What is, as you said, like I just pulled everything out of my head and put it on this paper. And I felt like, okay, this, like, I feel like relief. It's out, it's on paper. And it brought me to my own answer. I mean, people try to help. And yes, sometimes it's easier just to ask people for the recipes. But at the end, we have our own values and own story. So it is in us.
I mean, it's always good to have feedback from others and get perspectives if you're very lost. But in the end, it's also a combination of doing this work for yourself, like organizing your thoughts, organizing, what pros and cons and what it looks like. And also just, I think it's before thinking about like a big change in your life, like, something big has to happen or a massive change, we can already, embrace change in our day-to-day life. Like what has already changed from 3 months ago to now? Like maybe it's a change in your thought, maybe it's a change in your attitude, maybe it's a change in your environment. We're just not aware of how many things have actually changed in our lives and how we're actually able to do it and face change and be okay with change. So I think it's just consciously taking that decision of, I will do something that I've never done before. I will go in this direction, or let me try and go to this event here. Like trying to step into this uncomfortable new things and out of your comfort zone, how they say, right? Slowly just taste a glimpse of what it would look like to change a little morning routine or change a little something in your life, and just notice that, okay, how does, like how you are responding to this kind of change in your life, because it's already happening. It already happened multiple times probably, and we're not even aware of it.
We talk now a lot about actually inner change. You know, you make the decision, I want to change something. I'm not connected anymore, maybe to a job or to a certain part of my life, and I want to change it actively, which is already scary. But what if we face changes in our lives that are external? When life brings you to a certain situation and you're like, oops, this was absolutely not on my agenda. I don't know, what if you lose a job, or what if you lose a relationship or lose a parent? If things just happen and it's out of your control, what is helpful in changes that just happen to us?
We can't control external factors. Eventually, what we can control is the way that we try to respond and manage it. And that's why I really think it's so important to be self-aware and work on like your emotions so you can learn ways to emotionally regulate yourself and release emotions. I would say eventually losing a job or losing a partner, losing a family member is so painful. And, you know, it's a big thing in your life. We try to bypass it, like, oh, don't worry, and like, oh, it's fine and you'll be fine. I think first of all, it's important that we allow ourselves to go through this shock or this change. Like, oh, wow, now things are not going to be as they were, or I can't control how I wanted it to be. And this attachment, like of how I want things to be, this expectation, when it doesn't go our way, eventually there's more pain. So I think first there's a process of processing all of these emotions and allowing them to be present, and then navigating, well, whatever the experience is, if it's a loss, if it's like a breakup, if it's, you know, really trying to navigate this and release it. And then over time, decide, well, how can I respond to this now in a way that's healthier for me? And often it's like we need to quickly want to hold on to something else that we can control, and another expectation or another demand. And, you know, I think there's also a thin line here of people who fall into the victim role, like self-pity, like, oh, look what happened to me, and I'm so unlucky, and life is so horrible with me. And then they stick to this story. And then everything that happens after that, it's also with this, oh, for me, nothing happens to me and everything's bad and everything's, you know.
It's a little bit self-fulfilling prophecy in a negative sense, right? Yeah.
Allow yourself first to feel it. I'm a strong believer that emotions don't last forever. There will come a moment that it will desensitize and you can, you know, really feel them, process them, manage them, release them. And when you feel that, okay, I've made peace with this, or I've accepted that this is the reality I am in now, and where do I position myself now, or how do I want to respond to this, then I can only make another decision of, all right, do I either stay with this victim role or this, you know, self-pity and like, oh, poor me, or do I like, all right, what can I do now in this moment with the situation I'm in, with what I have? That's all you can do. And what you can also do is be responsible of managing yourself. So it's, I take full responsibility. I give myself what I need. And then I use everything I have, people, situations, resources, whatever it is I have. What do I need? Like, how can I build this resilience? How can I kind of keep up with this new change that I'm going to face in life? Even if it's super difficult and painful. Sometimes people need a lot of time to heal from a big shift. There's a moment where you kind of say, it's enough now.
And I think that's so important. It's helped me a lot. Every time when I'm in a situation where I thought, okay, life happened to me, I feel maybe a little bit like a victim, but I don't want to stay here.
Of course.
I want to control, and I want to either ask bodies for help to get out, or but I have to make the first step. You know, I have to get up and I have to decide, okay, either I climb over the wall, or maybe I walk back and I look what kind of opportunities, maybe there's an Uber coming to pick me up for my next journey, you know? And I think it's so important to not stay in this state.
Yeah. And I think it's also an attitude thing, right? If we're like open to this change and opportunities, we can all do this as an exercise, but sometimes there's so much out there that can be so helpful for us when we're kind of surrender to it. Like, okay, well, this is it now, and I'm open for it. Like, bring it on. Let's see what happens. Suddenly there are people who want to support you. Suddenly there's an opportunity here for growth. Suddenly there's a new job position, which actually is exactly what you wanted. When we allow ourselves to embrace change and we surrender to it, I feel like we're somehow opening a channel to receive the new, the fresh. And sometimes that's amazing. And it's exactly what we needed. So it's kind of like a harsh wave. But then after that, you're like, shh, like civilizing, you know? I think it's also a very big attitude thing, like a mindset thing, of course, but then also an attitude. Like change doesn't necessarily have to be so bad or so painful or so confusing. It's a transition phase, and it's a space for the new. It's a space for opportunities. It's a space for doing things in a different way. And I mean, that's awesome. If you're someone who really wants to expand and grow and kind of bring the best version of yourself and live life, and then you want to be in constant movement. You want to be figuring out what else is there, what else can I do, and this is all embracing change.
What do you think are some people so afraid of change?
Well, I think it's making the wrong decisions. Like, well, what kind of change? So if it's their responsibility of change, it's like, what if I'm choosing something worse? What if I make the wrong decisions? What will others think of me? What, like judgments? What about the expectations? And I think it's also that feeling of we don't want to lose. And so if we are letting go of something that it's comfortable, it's safe, it's familiar, it's okay, but then we're not happy there and something, it's kind of like we don't want to feel that we're losing something and not gaining anything because we're in a space where I don't know what's next, or I don't know. But if I knew that what I'm going to, the change is for something better, like a job position, which is better.
It's much easier.
It's much easier. Like, oh, I'm super ready to change because I know I'm winning here, So I think it's that mindset as well of like, we don't want to lose. We want to win.
Yeah.
So if I see that there's no chance of winning here, I rather keep safe and feel that I'm in a win spot here. So I think that's one of the big things. But also it's like I'm winning time and space to play, explore, and figure things out. I feel that this transition phase, we have like a negative connotation towards it, but it's actually so nice because we don't give ourselves time for this, right? From school, you finish, you have to decide university, like what you want to study. Who knows when you're 17, 18, what you want to be.
Something, yeah.
And then when you study university, you're like, oh, well, if you studied this, now you have to be this. So you have to find a job right after university and you have to work. And then that's all you know. And then, it's like we have no space to reevaluate and rediscover and following that intuition and being like, well, something is missing. I'm going to give myself that space to figure it out. You can still maintain your job but it's, what can I be doing at the same time that it's going to help me move and find more clarity or find what's next?
If this person is extremely change averse, and says, I don't like change at all, what would you recommend? What could help?
Yeah, well, I would first invite the person to see what has actually changed in your life all these times, to see that actually in an unconscious way, there are many things that have changed in your life that you might have not been aware of. And you dealt with them, or kind of like help them remember the times that they faced change. What did they do? And also like this attachment to what is now. It's also okay. Some people don't really want change. And I would say you have to be willing. If you're okay living like this, even if you're not happy, as long as you're aware, it's your choice, right? And no one can obligate you to change. So I think, first of all, is people who have this, oh, no, I don't want to change, or it's too difficult, or it's too painful. First of all, it's like you either want it or you don't.
It's again self-responsibility.
Yes. So then I would like doing these kind of visualizations to see like, how does it, visualize your current life and the different areas, and how does it feel? What would it look like if it would be different, and kind of help them shift a little bit this perspective of, okay, like, it's not impossible, right? The resistance is so big that I would kind of work on kind of feeling like, how would it look like if this little small thing shifted a little bit in your life? Would it feel good for you? How would it impact you? How can we do this in a very small, tiny thing? And then over time, eventually people start getting comfortable and they start changing that narrative of, oh, change is bad for me, or I cannot do it. We're like, yeah, there are some things that are shifting and evolving. So I would go back to the small changes, big impact theory a little bit here, and try to work like that. Because again, it's a belief that we've had, like, oh, I'm not good with change, or I'm not, but you can work around this if you really wanted to. It's also like, well, you're making a choice to not be fully in your element or look for something that you actually are passionate and resonate with. And you can be like this forever. You can complain forever. You can hate your job and just be okay with this. Or you can take the risk and move into different direction.
I think it's so important what you said, that it's also about the self-awareness and the proactive decision-making, right? I think there is nothing bad if people are really okay, you know, and they're maybe like, I don't know, maybe I'm now in this relationship for 20 years. I'm actually not really happy, but it's all right. I don't want to lose this person. Yeah, but just being aware, you know, making a proactive decision, maybe also then changing in that situation a little bit, right? But it's like you have the steering wheel of your life in your own hands and you're aware of it, right? And you make really proactive decisions and you say, okay, or maybe I'm in this job. I'm not passionate about it anymore, but I think I will make maybe 5 more years here because maybe some areas are all right. I have peace here, whatever, right? But it's your decision. But I think the bad thing is if you're not aware and you just maybe see yourself as the victim, and then time passes by and you don't have much time left anymore, whatever. We never know, you know, how old we will become. And then you're like, shoot, you know, life is almost over. And I regret that I didn't do that. Or that I did not even try it. I think it's about that. You tried. And maybe you fail. It's all right. But you can say, I tried it.
Yeah. And along the way, you pick up so much. And I really like what you just said about like, change doesn't have to be very drastic or like you have to leave your relationship of 20 years. It's okay, I've made the decision that I'm not happy here, but I want to stay here and work around with my partner, how we can make it a little bit better, reconnect, or even with your job. Like I'm not fully passionate, but what can I connect with here that can help me be more inspired? Or what kind of personal challenge can I have to enjoy it a little bit more? So that's already a change. That's already, you know, like I said earlier, like a change can be an attitude change, a mindset shift, a routine change. Like it can be very tiny and minimum, but it already impacts your life. I don't think we're not talking about you have to completely let go of everything and stuff. It's what do you need right now that has to be done in a different way?
It's like to follow your feeling in that moment and to say, okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe I need a break. Maybe I need to travel 2 months and maybe I need to go and do a silence retreat, you know, and just change some little things. Or maybe also change a mindset, right? To maybe embrace things again. When we jump now to the corporate world, because in companies, there is constant change, right? When we think about innovation, everything is so fast. We have new technologies. Teams are constantly reorganized. What would you say to a team leader in terms of change? Because as we said, there are people that are really passionate about change and they're like, amazing, we have a new software solution. I'm super willing to learn that. I want to be really good and amazing. We're restructuring. And they're big fans of change internally. And you have the other people that are like, I don't like that. And I hate this. I worked 10 years with this software and now everything is new. I have to learn new things and I don't like this.
Yeah. Well, eventually we're all different and we, respond to change or any big shift in a different way. When it comes to a leader, for me, a leader is someone who, lives like every single day very aligned with their values, and that they're not only the leaders because that's their role or their statues or their whatever, but there are certain leadership skills which make you a leader. So if you're someone who really is in the workspace or in your life, really living through your values or company values, and your team is following you because of this and sees that coherence, that consistency, that discipline or that adaptation, it's kind of like your team follows this as well because you're the leader and we kind of follow you for that. So I think a leader has to be very consistent with these things. So like very flexible and open with change and kind of show that it's possible and how they also deal with this change. Because eventually I would, if I'm your employee, like I would kind of look up to you or see how you're doing it to kind of learn from you. And I think it's important that a team leader has like very open communication and doesn't like come with the communication of change out of nowhere. But if there's a constant meetings or constant close communication with your team where you're constantly, well, we're going through a shift now and how this would look like and how this would happen and how I can slowly integrate it to my team, I think people receive it better than out of nowhere, like, oh, now you have to change this and this is the way, like, because our system doesn't respond to big changes. It just doesn't understand it. It needs some adaptation. Like first I need to process, then I need to digest, and then I need to integrate, and then I apply, and we're all different. So I would say being a leader, it's quite a responsible role, but we're putting the example for our team. And then open communication and close communication. And I guess if there are people who have a hard time managing, depending on the team, like how big it is and stuff, have little meetings where you're actually helping the person cope with this change and what they would need in a little bit more personalized way. Like, do you need more explanation? Do you need more demonstration? Do you need to maybe co-work with someone to, like try to adapt a little bit to the team that you have, just because we're all different and we all also come with our own personal stuff. So I think this aspect of being honest and open communication and constantly like checking in, you kind of know when you're a team leader how everyone is in your team, right? And if someone doesn't follow the same values you have over a period of time or doesn't have the similar work ethic or work, you kind of know if the team is strong or something's missing. So in the end, you would have a team that's pretty much aligned somehow. And you're kind of demonstrating through your examples over and over again every day, like, this is the kind of culture we have, this is the kind of values we have, this is how we work, this is how we adapt. So I think it's a combination of things, but yeah, it depends on the size also of the team and that pressure, right? We feel like you have to shift now software after 10 years. Well, maybe this person needs more integration time. So I guess it's that individually knowing where everyone is and how you can help them, support them, because again, not everyone manages the same way.
I think it's also a good recipe to, as you said, being also passionate as a leader about the change, to bring that energy into the team as well, because it starts with you at the end. Yeah.
And people want to trust you. Like, you want to make sure that your team looks up to you, can receive support from you, can really see you as a leader and as an example. So if you're not being honest, if you're not being transparent, if you're not sharing, like recognizing, but also giving them feedback, like if you don't have this kind of relationship, then eventually like it's very difficult to have this empathy for you and connection with you. So I think, the transparency, the open communication is key for this. It's that feeling of, even if I have a hard time adapting to change, I know that I'm supported by my team leader, but also from my colleagues, which I feel that we all need, actually.
Absolutely. I did many times like software implementations, or I supported software projects. And back then, we always said it's not just the technology that you're implementing. It's not just you push a button and the whole company changes. You really have to think about the people as well. There's a big people aspect, processes, people, and technology, which, goes hand in hand at the end. And I feel very often in companies, they think about the technology because you want to innovate, you want to be the best company in your area, and about, okay, now let's restructure processes. But the people aspect, it's a little bit like, we do that somehow, And I think that's actually the most important part because you, have to somehow win the people for the change.
Yeah, and people want to be involved to feel that they are part of this whole shift. But if I'm given half the information and it's not clear and like, we shift now and this is what you have to do, people kind of feel like, now I have to figure out by myself. I don't know if it's right or wrong, how this actually works. No one's really here supporting me. Like, people need to feel, okay, I'm safe here and I'm supported here, and that someone is really teaching me, showing me like, and not expected to figure it out on their own, which sometimes happens, right? And also if you really think about the company or like, you know, teamwork, everyone needs to kind of be at the same pace, the same rhythm, informed the same way. Like, so it's so important to like set that time to either train them or to show them or to integrate or, you know, answer questions, because it's all for the better for the team and for the work and company as well. So
actually trust and transparency is the key skill, or are the key skills for leadership or for actually managing change in a team.
Yeah. And with to build that trust, we really need that empathy, right? When someone really has this empathy for you, knows your situation, knows where you're at, can kind of, then you start to trust this person. Like, oh, okay, this person's actually seeing me. Like, not just, you do this and ciao, right? It's like, I see you, I know where you're at, I know it's been difficult, or I know it's a big change, but let's figure out a way to do it together and like collaborate and, you know, support one another. So I think that's fundamental.
I'm very curious about also your talk that you held at the United Nations. The title, I think, was Be a Change, right?
Be the change.
Correct. Be the change, yes.
Yeah.
Do you have like a little summary of the talk or some thoughts about it that you would share with us?
Yeah, so it was a lot about to be the change in society for the world, right? Where we are maybe focusing on sustainability or just being the change worldwide, like external stuff that we can do. It all starts within, like the change starts from within. So a lot of my talk was about this, like how do we face or like change from within so we can then create that ripple effect and make societies change, right? And so my whole talk was really about, I shared my story like in a lot of depth, like how I was able to find that change from within and how this transformation, this change has helped me then to do what I do now and how that has a ripple effect towards others in society and how they, with what I've passed on, they're able to change and then they're able to change someone else. And it's kind of this ripple effect. And you know, sometimes when we do the inner work and talk about inner change, you have to change, you have to focus on yourself. It kind of seems so selfish or so, but actually, if we all did this inner work and found what aligns with us, what we're here to do in life, like what our purpose is, what our values are, like what are our passions and talents, and we're able to kind of expose that and expand that and really live within that integrity of who we are, that has so much to offer for the rest of the world and for our societies. So yeah, it was pretty much about this. First of all, we need self-awareness. There's no way that we can shift anything if we don't know what needs to be changed or modified. And then also it was your circle, like connecting, like talk to people that are different. And it's always, you can always pick up something. And because we're also a big reflection of one another, we're mirroring each other the whole time.
True.
It's super interesting when you're actively listening to someone. You sometimes get insights of yourself like, ooh, I resonate with this, or ooh, I resonate with this story and I feel this as well. And so when we're able to share and connect with one another, we start learning even more about ourselves. And we also can find clarity, like, oh, this resonates. Like, I didn't think about this, but I do this, or I want this. Or so it's really important. Eventually, everything that has to do with communication and self-love, like really accepting your story, like whatever it is that you've lived in the past, however you've, you know, whatever conditioned you, whatever you've lived, recognize yourself for who you are as a totality. And when I'm able to accept and recognize all of this, I can then have compassion for myself, then I can have empathy, then I can trust, and then I can build self-confidence and self-esteem. And, you know, all of these things are very important for you to embrace change. When you're so passionate about what you do and you're able to share it with someone else, this already passes on an energy to someone else who's also inspired, like, oh, I'm going to look for my purpose and what I'm passionate about. And then, you know, and then we can actually contribute to society and be the change for the world.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's so true. I felt like when I had something I was really passionate about, you're so like your eyes are sparkling and you're like, oh, you know, and this inspires, of course. And I love this point that you say it has a ripple effect, because at the end, of course, we are changing for ourselves, but it's so beautiful. Actually, this thought, you're changing also the society. When you change yourself, you really help other people as well to change. Yeah. And then we can all change together. We can change the world together. It's beautiful. Yeah. And it's like a higher thing.
Yeah. And for me, it's like the more in tune you are with yourself, the more you kind of embrace and love yourself and kind of do this inner work, you just carry a different energy. And this is spread with the people you're around. Even if you don't necessarily have to have a conversation, they already feel that, and you're already inspiring them for whatever they need. And I think this is just so beautiful. And so, yeah, I really encourage everyone to do the inner work, find, reconnect with themselves, find that, what sparks that joy within you. And I'm sure that we can all kind of contribute in a positive way to the people around us.
Do you have a last word, a quote, or something that you would like to share with the listeners? Something that comes up. It's just something.
Okay, well, the first thing that comes is this book that actually helped me also start embracing all of this journey, which I read it in Spanish, but I think she's a German psychologist or something, which is basically feel the fear and do it anyways. I often have to go back to this quote or this book because, of course, it's scary to face a change or face yourself and face your scars and face uncertainty in life. But, we can also see fear as excitement. And I always feel like if something scares me a little bit, but it's also like, I also really want it, I try to shift the state of like, this fear is actually excitement. And it's, of course, I'm scared because I don't know the outcomes of it, but what happens if I don't do it? Or what happens if I don't step into it? I will never know, and I will never get a step closer to what I actually would want. So for me, it's like face the fear, live with the fear. It's always good. It's actually a good thing to feel it. If I didn't feel it, maybe I didn't care about that thing. So it's feel it and do it anyways, and kind of trust the process, or trust that it's okay. Like if it's a mistake, it's just a mistake. And I can make another decision. And if it goes well, I stay here. And then it's kind of like playing with life a little bit and taking things with more humor, or more like, it's not the worst, what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah, I would say last final thing, feel the fear. It's a good thing, and just go for it.
Amazing. I love it. I just thought about a mantra that I once had when I was in my car. And I went through a lot of, change in my life. And in that moment, I just heard this sentence. I had this sentence in my head: whatever happens, wherever life puts me in, life will give me the skills, or I already have the skills within me and I will see them and connect them, or I will get tools and people and whatever it needs. Either I have the resources already within me, or life will somehow bring it to me, but I'm able to do it.
I love it.
So I wrote that down in my journal as well, and was like, yes. And every time when I'm doubting, I know, I can do it.
I love it. Yeah. And it's crazy because when we have this mindset, we really can see that we actually have more than we actually need. We have the resources, we have the skills, we somehow figure out. And that's just so like empowering. Yeah. Love it.
Me too. Thank you so much for all the insights. I loved it, really. Me so too. many good tools. And thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for listening to us today.